43. The Creature. Go back to your room once you feel up to it, said Sang. We'll check the area. He and Elena left the cabin to search for that creature, I assumed. I stayed on the floor, feeling the pain slowly ebb as the injection took effect. It was wonderfully effective. The agony subsided to a dull ache, then stayed at that level. Guess it was too much to ask for it to disappear entirely like before. I got up and scanned the room, nursing my shoulder gingerly. The room was an ordinary office, with a desk and chair and a phone on the wall. Maybe I should try to call Dr. Drake, I thought, but I couldn't remember his number. That creature had hurt him badly enough to splatter his blood over the photograph, and it was all my fault, of course. I was the one who'd been so interested in that photo, and my morbid curiosity had led that thing to Dr. Drake. I hoped he was okay. Then suddenly, a horrible fear gripped me. Kyrie! I started to run back to the inn, stumbling through the snow. At the inn, a middle-aged man was napping behind the front desk so serenely it felt anticlimactic. Trying not to wake him up, I tiptoed back to the room, number 3, and I paused in front of the door. I could hear voices inside. I pressed my ear to the door. Let me look at your ear. What for? If you have a mole, then I'll know you're really Kadaj. Go ahead. Let's see. Well, it is you, Kadaj. See? I'm so glad. You can't be that glad. The other guy's the only one on your mind these days. That's totally different. You're an old friend, Kadaj. I missed you, of course, and I'm glad to see you. I hate him. Evan, that is. I want to kill him. Well, a gun fired. I won't let you. I threw open the door and found Kyrie sitting on the bed, pointing the pistol at a young man sprawled on the floor with the same face I'd seen a split second in the cabin. A face I wouldn't soon forget. The silver-haired figure slowly pulled his limbs closer to his body. You shot me. How could you? Kyrie took aim, ready to fire again. You wouldn't do it again. Not to an old flame. She pulled the trigger. Another gunshot shattered the quiet of the inn. I heard rapid footsteps in the hallway, and the snoozing clerk appeared in the doorway. What's going on in here? You'll pay for that. The boy jumped to his feet with inhuman speed. A small, sharp sword seemed to have materialized in his hand. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Then I jumped forward and grabbed Kyrie's hand to pull her up. The creature's smile was pure evil. Kyrie, let's get out of here, I said, dragging her from the room. The clerk had obviously decided that whatever trouble was going down, he wanted no part of it. I ran down the hall, certain we'd be followed. I looked back as we turned the corner and saw the boy walking after us, the sword dangling from his hand. Kyrie kept glancing back as I pulled her outside. I got my bearings and headed for the village gates, fast. But the silver-haired boy, or creature, or whatever it was, had overtaken us. Not on foot, though. He just appeared there in front of us. Maybe there was no way to lose him, but I wasn't about to stop running. I spun and headed north this time. As we approached the Icicle Inn, I could smell something burning. Kyrie suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. She shook free of my hand and hunched to the ground, clutching her head. Kyrie? Not knowing what else to do, I took off the down jacket and tried to pull her bare arms into its sleeves. As I did, the world around us started to turn a brilliant red. Fire! I'm scared. I looked up to see flames rising from the inn we'd just left. The fire grew even as I watched, sparks dancing in the cold air, swooping through the village like an army of fireflies. It had stopped snowing. Come on, Kyrie, get up. I got in front of her and forced her upright. She shook her head fiercely, like a reluctant child, and I held her face in my hands so she would have to look at me. I know, fire is scary, but right now, there's something even scarier after us. Got it? She nodded jerkily, even as she trembled. There, you can do it. Calm down, Kyrie. You too, Evan. She was looking up at me with the desperate trust in her eyes. I had to say something else. We're going to be okay. I'll take care of it somehow. My father was the founder of the Shinra Company, and my brother is Doofus Shinra himself. Wait, why was I telling her that? Sorry, I didn't mention it that earlier. I already knew, Kyrie said. Singh told me. I just felt like if we talked about it, you'd become a different person. I'm still me, but right now I'm stronger than ever, thanks to the Shinra blood in me. Because Shinra knows everything, right? You can leave it all to me. Even as it came out of my mouth, I knew that it sounded like complete nonsense, but it made Kyrie smile. There it is. It wasn't the blood in my veins that gave me strength. Let's go. I took her hand and started walking due north. I wasn't about to lead her any closer to the fire. I couldn't stand to see her frightened like that. It's about to explode, she said behind me. Huh? The bomb on your back. Oh, right. It's really cool. I know, right? Any word from Reno and Rude? Sang called up to Elena after checking the missile launcher mounted below the helicopter. They said they're on their way here. Wait, why? I'm sorry, sir. They called when you were out, and I just happened to mention where you were. Good. Elena blinked at her boss. Sang simply climbed aboard and surveyed the village. The inn was ablaze, painting the scene red. Take us up. Yes, sir. As we got close to the cabin, I'd followed, not Fabio. I heard the roar of a helicopter, Sang and Elena, I assumed. Hovering low, their chopper turned it and then tilted, in its nose downward, once it pointed our way. When it reached the village, it started to slowly circle. They must be looking for us, said Kyrie. I guess. Whoa! I'd been wondering where our enemy was when I saw the silver-haired boy spring up clear from the ground and grab onto one of the helicopter's landing skids. I thought I was seeing things when a rapid series of flashes appeared in the helicopter's window, and an instant later, the bark of a machine gun reached us. It sounded bigger than the ones we'd carried. The Turks were ready for a fight. With the boy still holding onto the skid, the helicopter circled higher, silhouetted against a full moon that had only just appeared from behind the clouds. The flat round disk in the sky called to mind scenes from the past. Memories from when I was 17, and those 7 days I'd spent with the knowledge that the world was ending. Meteor. The disaster from the sky. Or was it the calamity? Oh, I murmured. What? Asked Kyrie. The calamity from the sky did not refer to meteor, but to something else. Then I remembered what Dr. Drake had told me. It is hard to explain. Genova is a mysterious biological entity the Shinra Company was studying for a long time. Apparently, it fell from space eons ago. The calamity from the sky, people called it. And then I had an idea. It might have been the first time a good plan had come to me so quickly. The helicopter whirred louder above us, dipping lower and headed north. The intermittent bursts of light and sound from the machine gun said that Sang and Elena were fighting desperately. To what effect, we couldn't tell. The creature was dangling from the helicopter by one hand. I fancied I could see it laughing down on us. Kyrie, we might be able to take him down. Okay, she replied, following the helicopter with her eyes. Wait, what did you just say? I've got an idea, and I think it'll work. Kyrie stared at me, her eyes wide. Then she twined her arms around my neck. I knew you had it in you, Evan. You're the best. Except she sounded kind of surprised. Whatever, I just hoped I was still the best in her eyes by the time this was all over. 44. Despair and Hope. We followed Sang and Elena's helicopter north through the village, ducking under the rope with a keep out sign and venturing into the vast snowfields. The helicopter flew in wide arcs over the white wilderness. From down here, we couldn't tell whether our quarry was still clinging to that aircraft, but the hunt was on, and we had to assume it was still up there. I looked out over the snowfields. Beyond the initial downward slope were rolling hills stretching further than I had ever thought, casting deep shadows in the moonlight. It wouldn't be easy to see those crevices. I guess we just have to go for it, I said, stepping forward. Kyrie's hand in mine, on my uninjured side, made me feel like I could do anything. That was just a romantic flight of fancy. I had no confidence whatsoever in what I was about to try. But the warmth of her hand was real. No question about that. Ignoring the whump-whump of the helicopter overhead, I concentrated on the snow-covered landscape under my feet. It wasn't long before we found our first crevice, one of those dangerous pitfalls the hotel owner had warned us about. A fissure in the Earth's surface formed when the life stream tore it open 2 years ago. At its widest point, it was about as far across as I was tall and long enough to fit the entire length of the chopper. Let's use this one, I said. Okay. Side by side, we cautiously edged closer to the crevice. Though beneath us, it looked solid. It could just as easily be a snowdrift jutting out over nothing. Finally, we got close enough to peer inside. From the distance, it had looked like a pitch-black abyss, but now we could see that beneath the thick layer of snow, the walls were made entirely of ice. They plummeted deep, deep into the earth, and somewhere below them, the life stream must be coursing. Evan, look! Kyrie pointed towards a massive wall of white. The ice cliffs rising up to meet the sky of winking stars. The helicopter had just wheeled away from the cliffs and headed back towards us, lurching up and down in an attempt to shake off the enemy. That had to be a risky maneuver. Eventually, it was hovering above us. Is the creature still holding on? Said Kyrie. I can't see it. I squinted, craning my neck, following the helicopter, and looking for me. It was right behind us. Kyrie and I scrambled to our feet and stepped toward it, away from the crevice. You don't know where Genova is, so I have no more use for you, said the thing. But since we've all gotten to know one another, we might as well have some fun. Is this your idea of fun? I said, looking back toward the village where the raging fire had spread from the inn to the other buildings. I couldn't see from here, but I could imagine the panicking crowds. It was Kyrie's, now it's mine, replied the creature in the shape of a boy. I never did anything like that. Its hand flashed out and grasped Kyrie's shoulder. She flinched, and I yanked her away from its grasp. Kadaj, Yazo, and Laws, your bad crowd from a while back. Stop it. And the burning slums. I didn't go with them. I refused. But you didn't stop them either. So many people died in that fire. Your 3 friends among them. You loved Kadaj, didn't you? From what Leslie had said, I already knew that Kyrie's fear of fire was triggered by something horrible in her past. Maybe something she even blamed herself for. This thing had found that memory somehow, and was playing with it. Shut up! I went to throw a punch at the creature, but it leaped into the air, over my head, and landed behind me. With its back to the crevice, the creature smirked at me. Please stop, I'm sorry, just leave her alone, I begged in a pathetic voice. For once, it actually was an act. I couldn't let it know what I was thinking, now or never. I furiously tried to avoid looking at the yawning abyss behind it. You're sorry? For what? It said with a nasty smile. For how you've always staring at Kyrie's legs? Maybe that would have thrown me off earlier, but now I wasn't fazed by the truth. What do you know about anything? You're just a kid, a little brat. For the first time, I felt like I had the upper hand. As the thing's face twisted in anger, I could see out of the corner of my eye Kyrie sink low and launch herself forward at the creature. Kadaj, I'll just go ahead and call it that, took a single step back and jumped. With nothing to break her momentum, Kyrie flailed downward through thin air. I jumped forward, trying to grab her. She skittled, spun, and reached for my hand as the snow started to crumble below her feet. One more desperate lunge, and I had her hand. But she was already slipping into the crevice. I held on with all my strength and braced myself to take the weight, but the load was more than I'd been expecting, and I was pulled face down on the snow. I still had her hand, but now I realized I was sliding forward toward the ledge. Evan! I lifted my head and looked for her. I could only see her hand. Evan, Somehow I imagined her telling me to let go. I wasn't about to do that. I don't want to die, said Kyrie. I know, but despite my best efforts, I was still sliding forward. Do you need some help? Asked Kadaj. Yes, I replied. I mean, it was the truth. My slow slide came to a sudden halt, but now I had no idea. My left shoulder was burning. I turned my head to see the slender sword had been run through the shoulder, and it was pinning me in place. The white snow beneath me was turning red with my blood. I screamed, my right hand slackened, and the most precious thing in the world to me slipped away. Down here, sir. What should we do? Sang had already spotted the silver-haired creature standing on the lip of one of the crevices, and he watched as it stabbed Evan with his sword, then looked up at the helicopter, laughing in triumph. No doubt. Sang had initially believed the boy had Genova cells within him, or was physically linked to Genova in some way, but it seemed it was just trying to find Genova. Its true nature was unclear, and Sang no longer had any idea what it could be. The only thing he knew, with absolute certainty, was that they could not let Genova fall into its hands. We'll hit it with missiles, he said. What about Evan, sir? Not our concern. But he's the president's brother. I already shot him, and I've been worrying I'll be fired for that. What part of not our concern don't you understand? Whoa, what the hell? Reno's eyes widened at the scene below as it came into view. Icicle Lodge was completely aflame. Where are Kyrie and Evan? Said Leslie, leaning forward from the back seat. The radio beeped to alert them of an incoming call. Reno switched to the speakers. Reno, where are you? It was Elena. Just arriving over at the village, Reno answered on the headset. But Where's Evan? Shouted Doyle behind him. Fly north past the village to the snowfields, said Elena. We're preparing to neutralize the enemy. We need support. What enemy? Reno wanted to know. How far away are you? I have a visual, Rude replied from the pilot's seat. Reno looked ahead, and sure enough, there was Sang and Elena's helicopter, hovering. Reno, prepare to engage, Rude said in a rumble. On it. Reno removed his seatbelt and turned in the narrow co-pilot seat, then scooched through the gap into the back. He went for the storage compartment under the 3 conjoined rear-facing seats and deftly snapped open the clasps. Doyle and Leslie watched quietly from the forward-facing seats as Reno lifted the seat cover and removed a large-caliber machine gun from the box. Man, it's been a while. Who's the target? Asked Doyle. Hell if I know. Reno plunked the heavy firearm on Leslie's lap and retrieved the tripod from the seat compartment. A few seconds later, he had it mounted on the recess of the right of the passenger seats. You don't know, but you're gonna shoot anyway? Said Doyle. Reno retrieved the gun from Leslie and attached it to the tripod. After making sure the barrel whirled smoothly, he hauled out the canister of the ammo from the compartment, fed the belt into the gun, and closed the seat cover and sat on it, staring at Doyle. Our commander is aboard that other helicopter. He gives us orders and we follow him. That's how organizations work. Sucks to be you guys, Leslie snorted. Of course, you wouldn't call it an organization. You'd call it a gang or a crew or something. Works the same way, though. Reno stood up and reached for the handle to open the hatch. Sang, Reno, and Rude are here. Sang, Reno and Rude are here, Elena reported. Sang donned the headset and pulled the microphone down to his mouth. Rude, I want you to pass us to the north, then circle around. Cut off the enemy's escape route with suppressing fire. We're going to engage it with missiles. He heard Rude's affirmation, fuzzy with atmospheric static. When the orders came in, Reno threw open the hatch, ignoring the icy wind that tore the cabin, and swung the barrel of the gun so it pointed outside. Soon he spotted the other chopper, about 20 yards ahead. Sang was sitting on the side facing them, gesturing go. Rude pushed the yoke forward, and the nose dipped in response. After a short distance, Rude brought the helicopter around and Reno scanned the group intently, trying to make out the enemy's position. He found their target beside a crevice, where the snowfield had cracked open. It was a slight silver-haired young man, and on the ground at his feet was Evan. Dumbass, Reno muttered. What are you waiting for? Engage, Sang's command rang from the speakers. Evan's down there, Rude answered in Reno's stead. He's already done for, said Sang. Fire. Doyle and Leslie exchanged a look. No can do, said Reno. Reno, Sang made his name into a sharp rebuke. He's our friend. Fine, let me briefly explain. Sang's voice abruptly cut out. Radio trouble. Rude mumbled, his hand drifting away from the radio's master switch. Doyle craned his neck, peeking over the pilot's seat shoulder, and saw the switch was in the off position. Evan's alive, Leslie said, low and insistent. You gotta help him. Elena, we're on our own, said Sang. Hold her steady. Yes, sir. There was no mistaking the hesitation in Elena's voice. So you're Evan's friend too? No, but Reno said, give me the controls. I'll take care of it. I've got it, sir. I can do it. I was sure I would lose my mind with pain and anguish, both from my shoulder and from losing Kyrie. Come on, what are you waiting for? Just kill me already. Lot of noise up there, said Kadaj. He sounded very far away. Evan. Kyrie. Had I really heard her voice? Kyrie, I screamed. At least I thought I did. But it could have just been in my head. Evan. This time I definitely heard her. We were both alive. In hopelessly dire straits, but alive. Maybe I'll start with them, Kadaj mused. I felt the sword slide off my shoulder. I'd briefly hoped the pain would ease with it, but no such luck. If I wanted the agony to stop, I would have to act. I couldn't get much worse than this anyway, and Kyrie was down there. On my knees and left elbow, I edged closer to the lip of the gaping chasm. Rude watched Elena wrestle with the controls of the other helicopter, apparently struggling to get the nose trained on their target. Beside her, Sang was fiddling with the control panel, probably calibrating the missile systems. Then he straightened and said something to Elena. The chopper gained altitude and circled back toward the village and around again, advancing straight toward the enemy and preparing to fire. Elena was clearly better at forward flight than hovering. "What are they doing?" said Reno, now back in the co-pilot seat. "Looks like Sang's gonna take care of it," Rue replied. "Nah, partner, you've gotta do it." "I don't even like Evan." "Sure, I know. Kyrie's okay, though." Rue dipped the nose pointing groundward through the pilot seat window. Reno peered out, and about 2 body lengths down from the rim of the crevice, on an icy overhang, was Kyrie in a puffy red jacket. She seemed to be attempting to climb back out. Above her boots, her legs were bare. Reno's teeth almost started chattering just from looking at her. Above the crevice, Evan was dragging himself forward on his belly, one painful effort at a time. Not far off, the boy identified as their enemy gazed unwaveringly at the helicopter. "How is that pint-sized punk a threat?" Reno remarked. "Last few years seems like almost all our enemies have been kids," said Rude. "True." "Rude, bring us lower," Leslie said, his voice unexpectedly close. Reno turned to see that Leslie had taken the position behind the machine gun. "All we have to do is take out that guy with the sword, right?" Doyle's fingers were closing around the hatch handle. "Hurry, Rude. Lose some altitude," Leslie insisted. "If I shoot him from this angle, I'll hit Evan." "I don't take orders from civilians," Rude muttered, but he dropped the helicopter anyway. Doyle opened the hatch, and once again the cabin was filled with wind and the scream of the engine. Then Leslie added gunfire to the din. "Sang, look! It's about time. Orders, sir? Bring us closer." Leslie was sure he'd seen bullets strike the target. "What is this guy, immortal?" "No one's immortal." Sword loosely dangling from his hand, the boy appeared to be laughing. Whatever he was nothing Leslie or Doyle had ever seen. "Hey, partner, Sang and Elena are coming in," said Reno. "That thing's coming our way," Doyle shouted behind him. He was right. Rue could see the boy walking toward them with a grunt of frustration. He took the helicopter higher into the air. "What the?" The silver-haired boy was right in front of them now. He had somehow leaped onto the nose and balanced there. He smirked, then thrust his sword through the glass, the reinforced pane shattering like a wine glass, and the point of the sword came to a stop at 1 inch from Reno's face. "Okay, not a punk, a monster. Civilians, get to the back. Time to jump ship." An instant later, Rude banked hard to the right. "Wait, what are you doing?" But Doyle's question was cut short, as he and Leslie were thrown sideways. They scrambled to hang on, but slid right out of the open hatch. "Going up!" Rude took the helicopter higher, but the boy who'd been right in front of them just seconds ago had vanished. "Where'd he go?" said Reno. "Behind you." Reno whipped around to find the boy sitting in the rear. "This is fun," he said with a grin. "Well, have fun by yourself." Reno and Rude both opened their respective doors and leaped out of the chopper. Firing! Once Reno and Rude had accomplished their daring escape, Sang pushed the launch button. "Blow 'em away!" Elena roared, and the missile, trailing a thick plume of fiery smoke, left the launcher on the belly of the helicopter and flew straight at the other craft with an unwavering purpose. It struck with a mighty explosion. Fire engulfed the helicopter in midair, and the machine plunged into the snow-covered ground, belching clouds of black smoke as it fell. 45. The Ice Labyrinth and the Life Stream. I think I made it to the crevice, still wriggling like a half-dead snake, at about the same time the helicopter exploded nearby. The shockwave knocked me right over the edge, rendering all my effort pointless, and I landed on the same icy ledge where Kyrie was standing. I hit my shoulder and bit back a scream. "Evan!" I was trying to get up and reassure her when we heard the sound of ice cracking. It was close, too. Guessing what was next, I abandoned the attempt to stand and reached up toward her. She caught the hint and took my hand, and I pulled her down next to me, crouching on the ice. She seemed confused, but I fought through the pain to pull her close with my functional arm. clutching the back of her head. Then, she understood and yielded to me, burying her face against my chest. We're okay now, I said. In the worst situation, this was the best option. Yeah. With a sound that dashed all hope, the shelf we were huddled on broke, away from the wall, and surface tilted, and we slid off into an empty space. If we hit the ground like this, with me under Kyrie, she would be spared some of the impact. Me, well, I'd be going in head first. Whatever happened, it would be quick, except we were still falling. I waited for the ground to hit us, but it didn't come, falling and falling. Still holding each other, we were suddenly enveloped in something soft, warm, and pure white. Even with my eyes closed, the brilliance shone through my eyelids. I felt neither hot nor cold. I had no idea what was happening. When I opened my mouth, something rushed in. I heard voices, or thought I did. Everything was muffled, like when you cover your ears in a crowded station, and the words mingled and overlapped until all meaning was lost. Senseless noise, but comforting somehow. Then the sound receded. We were sinking deeper and deeper. I could feel Kyrie clinging to me tight, and I answered in kind, wrapping my arms firmly around her. My arms, yes, both of them. My left shoulder didn't hurt at all. I tried rotating it, and the pain was truly gone. And then I was certain we were in the life stream. The current that takes in all lives once they've ended. That heals and purifies and generates new life, another form of life itself. It felt as if all the indistinct concepts that had been tantalizingly beyond my grasp suddenly settled neatly into the places they were meant to be. I was connected to the planet now. I was sleepy, unbearably drowsy. I kept falling, deeper, even deeper. A stinging in my cheeks woke me up. Kyrie's face was right next to mine, her eyes closed, and I could hear her slow, calm breath. I got up and looked around. There was a hole next to us, about 6 feet across and filled with liquid. From where we must have emerged, the walls and ceiling and floor around us formed a smooth tunnel of ice. Maybe this was a pathway where the life stream had passed 2 years before, a pipeline. Kyrie, I said. She screwed up her sleepy face in irritation and eventually opened her eyes. Evan. Kyrie. I hugged her and she sat up and I laughed. What? It's like all we've been doing recently is yelling each other's names and hugging. You're not wrong. But that was enough. My feet are cold, said Kyrie. It was warm in here, I said, pointing at the hole that led to the life stream. Maybe dip your feet in. Well, it wasn't really warm or cold either, it was just nice. I plunged my hand into the hole. The frigid liquid seemed about to take my skin right off, but undeterred, I put my arm right up to the shoulder. My fingertips made it to the warmth. It's the life stream, right? Said Kyrie. Yeah. Were you able to read it? No. It's nothing like I imagined. But it did help us, I said. Yeah, it did. Kyrie clutched her cheek, her knees close to her chest. Oh, geez, it's cold. Let's look for a way out. It'd be stupid to end up freezing to death now. If we had to, we could probably jump back into the life stream, although there was no way to know whether it would be so helpful a second time. The life stream was not always kind. Everyone had learned that lesson 2 years ago. It just wasn't angry right now. At least, that was my sense. This is a pathway for the life stream, so there must be an exit somewhere, wherever it went 2 years ago. Right. Kyrie was smiling. She nodded. What? You're acting different, she remarked. Like you know what you're doing. Because usually I don't have a clue. I pretended to sulk and started walking. Catching up to me, Kyrie grabbed my left arm and remembered my injury. Oh, sorry, I forgot. No, it's okay. It's all healed. Really? The life stream's amazing. My good deeds paid off, I smiled. Something Fabio would say. I wonder if Fabio is in there too, Kyrie murmured. You know, I bet he is. We walked along hand in hand, silent for a while. I felt guilty to be so glad we were alive. I knew that there was life beyond death, one spent as part of the planet, but knowing that didn't make death any easier to accept. Not my own, and certainly not a friend's. We must have walked for at least an hour. The cold bit deep and hard and never let up. And that was me. I couldn't imagine how Kyrie must have felt with her bare legs. The ice that formed the pipeline was translucent, but this deep underground, not a hint of light from the surface reached us. Still here and there, The floor beneath us glowed. Thanks to the life stream flowing somewhere even deeper in the earth, at one point, where it was especially bright, we found a water hole, like the one through which we'd come. We could jump in it if we hit a dead end, I was thinking, but would that doom us or save us? I didn't mind much either way. If we both agreed, there was our way out. We'd already met several branches in the pipeline, figuring the result would eventually be the same no matter which fork we took. I chose our path arbitrarily. Right way, wrong way, didn't matter, because I wouldn't find an answer by thinking about it. The only thing to do was to keep going. The lowest point came from when we found a hole in the ceiling, the bottom of a crevice. It probably led up to the surface, but we had no means of climbing the smooth ice that stretched out above us, seemingly forever. Okay, you can yell at me now, I said. If I talk, I'll let out the warm air inside me, Kyrie moaned dramatically and crouched down to rub her legs. Then, there was a sudden rush of wind from behind. Kyrie nearly fell over, and I staggered. Pretty stiff breeze, I remarked. It's still there. She was right. After the initial strong gust, I could still feel the air moving faintly. It must have come from that crevice, I said. I don't care where it's coming from. I want to know where it's going. Kyrie got up and began walking with the wind. If it's blowing through, there has to be a way for it to blow out again. So we soldiered on, with the wind literally at our backs. It gave us hope. The weather's getting rough again, said Sang, staring out at the snowfields. So now what? Reno said. He did not look particularly interested in the answer. Elena and I are going back to Under Junon, and we'll regroup there. Rude, you'll come with us. We'll drop you off at Helan. Helan? For Unit 3, which you'll use to come back and pick up Reno and the civilians. Reno and Rude regarded their commander with confusion. You want to stay and help look for them, don't you? They followed Sang's gaze down the slope where Doyle and Leslie were crossing the snowfield, laden with the long rope. Following the breeze, we walked another hour until we found another one of those holes descending into the life stream. Beyond it, the path began to gently slope forward. I started to think maybe this was actually going to work, and it would lead us to the surface, but we climbed. As we climbed, we also moved further and further from the underground light sources. It was getting dark. Up ahead of me, Kyrie stopped short, and I hurried to her side. It's a dead end, she said, disappointment in her voice. She was right. The path came to an end about 50 yards. There was a hole, but in the ceiling, the wind could escape that way, but not us. Let's try another route, I said. If we stayed here, I was afraid our last spark of hope would go out. Evan, look. At the end of the tunnel was something strange. 20-somethings, in fact. In the gloom, I couldn't tell what the dark huddled shapes were exactly, but each was about the size of a person. Should we go see? I said. Yeah. Dread creeping up my spine, I approached the dead end. The black shapes were human corpses, swathed in dark robes with hoods, men and women and children. People dressed in black. Where had I heard that? Right, the owner at Icicle Inn. They must have been some of the people my mom was following, the ones she was trying to help. Look at their faces. They almost look alive. They've been frozen the whole time. Evan? Said Kyrie. Huh? I said, tearing my eyes from one of the bodies and to look at her. She reached for me and grasped my arm and stared at something further back, shrouded in shadows. I gazed at the spot where she pointed, and there in the corner was my mother. She wore a red down jacket, much like Kyrie's, and she was sitting up with her back against the wall, one arm hugging her knees and her chest, and the other fallen by her side. Mom? She couldn't have been asleep. She could have been asleep. Still clutching my arm, Kyrie started to sprint forward. But even though she nearly wrenched my arm off, I couldn't move. Evan? I didn't answer. The best I could do was shake my head. Are you okay? Yeah. No, you're not. I am. Do you want me to go check on her? She asked. I said nothing, and Kyrie walked slowly toward my mother, finally crouching down in front of her. Hello, Miss Townsend. My name is Kyrie Cannon. Then, having introduced herself, Kyrie reached down and touched my mother's wrist. Resting on the floor, after a few seconds, she let out a heavy sigh. Unable to watch anymore, I looked at my boots. When I thought of what it must have taken for my mom to come here, something burned in my chest. Had she fallen down a crevice, wandered around, and then finally arrived here with no hope left? Had she sat there quietly waiting for death? Kyrie eventually came back, holding an envelope. Here. It was the Shinra Company logo, printed on the face. It was addressed to Mr. Nick Foley in my mother's handwriting. I opened the seal and found several pieces of neatly folded paper inside. To Mr. Nick Foley, Manager, Nibelheim Response Center Operations Division, Shinra Electric Power Company. I was able to identify 5 of the experimental subjects who inexplicably left Nibelheim to head north. All were deceased by the time of discovery. Their names were as follows: Caitlin Stark, Edmund Stark, Trevor Showen, Ezra Monte, Ian Meadows. I found them underground beneath the snowfields north of the Icicle Lodge. The subterranean tunnels form a maze down there, and I found all the bodies in separate locations. It's unclear what might have brought them down there. The current whereabouts of Rick Fergus, Lisa Tuddy, and Senna York remained unknown. I also discovered 7 other bodies that appear to be similar experimental subjects, and have concluded that they came to the area from places other than Nibelheim. End of report. 4th Settlement Unit, 005, Annette Townsend. To Mr. Nick Foley. Nick, I'm writing this as a note to you as a friend. I briefly deserted my post, and those people might have died as a result of my dereliction of duty. But I ask you, who would have expected them to leave Nibelheim? I still believe I did everything I could as their caretaker. Please get the money to Evan somehow. I must sound shallow, but the way I'm always talking about my money, but he always will need it. He really will. Thank you. I ran to my mother and held her tight. She looked alive, untouched by death, but so much smaller than I remembered. Her blonde hair felt soft against my face. Evan, said Kyrie. She was standing behind me. There's one more letter. It was in the pocket of her jacket. I took it, sat down beside my mother, and began to read. Dear Mom, it's been about 10 days since Meteor went away. I'll be at the station in the slums for an hour every day starting at noon, and I'll try to be there as much as I can outside of that too. It was the note I'd left at my house 2 years ago. I buried my face in the paper, trying to hold back the surge of regret. There's something on the back too, Kyrie said gently, crouching next to me. I turned over the paper. The writing was weak and shaky, unlike the note for Nick. Dear Evan, I'll start with the most important thing. You remember when you had heart surgery, right? The procedure went fine, but they found something else. A hematoma on your brain. It'll get bigger as you grow up and eventually kill you. You should have had an operation right away, but it's taken me this long to get the money together. I feel terrible about that, but the cash is in the house, and the money from this old job should be enough to cover it. I told Nick to make sure you can get it. I know you don't like him, but just put up with him for a bit. There's a surgeon named Dr. Dimitri in Junon. I met him a little while ago and made him agree to perform the operation. So now you have to get it, okay? There's something else I need to tell you. I've always kept this from you, but when I was younger, I worked for the Shinra Company. I was the president's secretary. At the time, it was every girl's dream job. I was over the moon, and I got so caught up in the excitement that I did something very, very stupid. I knew at the time how stupid it was, but I couldn't stop myself. When it ended, I didn't care whether I lived or died. I was in despair. But then I had you, and you got me back on my feet. Thank you, Evan. I can never tell you how much you've done for me. I think I can write a little more. I have one last wish. There are people who came to help, who gave me help when I really needed it. And if you happen to meet any of them, please thank them for me. One is Mr. Vincent Valentine. When I left Icicle Lodge for Midgar, he got me out of a tight spot. Mr. Sid Highwind and Mr. Barrett Wallace helped me on the way back up here again. Evan, I know you'll never get to read this, but I had to write it anyway. There's something I've learned in my adventures. There is so much good in the world. I've traveled so far despite my ignorance, thanks to all the good in other people. And I can't help feeling the same goodness will see this letter in your hands someday. Goodbye, sweetheart. I have to sleep now. I love you, Evan. I heard Kyrie sniffling. I didn't cry. I couldn't, not in front of my mom. Let's go, Kyrie. We're still alive. Right. She slowly got to her feet, and I did the same. One more time, I thought, giving my mother a last look, and I noticed an odd bulge beneath her jacket. I hunched down and unfastened it. She was wearing a yellow sweater, and tucked under it, I found something wrapped in a big checkered handkerchief. I knew that handkerchief. She'd used it a lot. I reached out to take the bundle. What the? It's warm. How can that be? Said Kyrie. I don't know. Whatever it was, maybe I had helped her. Maybe it helped keep her warm in the end. I'll just borrow this, Mom, so I can give it to someone else who's important to me. I passed it over to Kyrie. She hesitated. Are you sure? I guess it's kind of creepy when we don't know what it is. That's not what I meant. As Kyrie protested, I stepped forward smiling for her. I won't look back again. There you are. The sound of that voice from right behind me made my blood boil. Here was this evil bastard, putting a lie to a goodness my mother had believed in, and I wasn't going to put up with it. I whirled around and threw a punch square in his cheek. I'd never landed a blow that well on anyone before. I felt it in my fist. The boy looked startled as he reeled back, then fell. What the hell do you want from us? I shouted. Feelings for your mother, for each other, for friends, whatever those are, your feelings. He seemed to be struggling with the words as his face screwed up and... Was he about to cry? An instant later, he sprang up like an animal and grabbed the sword from empty space. I don't like you two. Evan, just forget him. Let's go. Kyrie grabbed my hand and started to run. Why bother, said the boy. You won't get away. We were going to give it a shot, but the floor was icy, and it was all we could do to not lose our footing. And then I realized we had nowhere to go. We were just running for the sake of running. A life stream hole came into view. Kyrie, let's jump in. The life stream will protect us. That was the source of all the good in the world. It had to be. Ah! Kyrie slipped, then her arms and legs flailed clumsily in imitation of a dance. She hit the ground, and as she did, so did the checkered handkerchief bundle, and it came undone, and the thing inside flew out. I rushed to help her, and Evan, look! She pointed at the thing that had fallen out of the handkerchief, now slowly sliding across the ice. It was unsettling, some kind of shriveled piece of flesh. And I recognized it. That was beyond question the mummified arm from the photo. I said, you won't get... The voice behind us broke off mid-sentence. I turned to see the boy staring at the preserved limb, the piece of Genova. Mother? Mother? He staggered haltingly toward it. I dashed in first and kicked the monstrous fragment at the hole in the icy floor. It went spinning, and just as I'd intended, fell in. What have you done? The boy sprinted past us in pursuit. The Genova piece bobbed in the water for a brief few seconds before it sank. Mother! He screamed as he leapt in and then yelped. Agony was clear on his face. Submerged up to his chest, he struggled to climb back out. I went in closer and kicked him in the shoulder. Go away! He glared furiously at me as bubbles rose up from the life stream, covering him in foam, like it had a will of its own. You can't! The boy's face and hair were veiled with white and pale green shimmering liquid. I'll grow stronger, and I will return, was probably what he meant to say. But before he could, he dissolved into motes of light and disappeared. The brilliant glow drifted up to the ceiling, briefly filling the tunnel with light, and then dissipated, like so many sparks from a doused fire. We got him, I crowed. Yeah, poor thing. Sheesh, don't say that. He'll just come back out of loneliness if you start pitying him. He'll come back out of loneliness if you start pitying him. After all, I knew what it felt like to be searching for your mother, how that lonely ache made you gravitate toward any hint of kindness or consideration. But I found people who accepted me. I was able to change. That boy had nothing. Maybe that was the only difference between him and me. You know, Evan, Kyrie said, I've been wondering, what was your plan for defeating him back on the snowfield? I appreciated that she'd gone all this time without giving me the third degree. It would have sounded ridiculous if I'd said it aloud, even to me. I thought humans had no way to kill it. Maybe the life stream could do the job for us. After all that, though, we were still stuck underground. We wandered the tunnels, this time ignoring the holes in the floor in favor of the ones in the ceiling, shouting up for people to help us each time we came across one. Hey! Hello! We took turns shouting, sometimes at the same time. Hello! Down here! We tried it, 5 different holes before we got a response. Evan, is that you? I had not expected to hear Leslie. I'm here too, Kyrie called. Stay right there. That was Headman Doyle. We did it. Kyrie and I turned to each other and hugged. I can see you too, Reno added. We separated ourselves and looked up through the fissure. Yep, up here. Reno was leaning towards the edge, his head framed against the sky above. He took a deep breath and blew out a puff of white fog. Damn, it's cold here. And whose fault is it that we're here? Said Kyrie, and we each pointed at Reno, just as he pointed with both hands at us. 46. A number of epilogues. While many of the buildings at the Icicle Lodge had burned to the ground, no lives had been lost. Although, that was scant consolation to all the people made newly homeless in that inhospitable climate. Kyrie, Leslie, Doyle, Reno, and I flew out in the helicopter Rude brought for us, filling one another in on what had happened to us. Then we landed at Under Junon, where we met Sang and Elena. The latter apologized again for shooting me in the shoulder, but just like before, I didn't feel particularly sincere. I doubted it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship or anything. Sang, meanwhile, treated me with even more professional detachment than before, but when I explained about my hematoma and the surgery I needed, he told me that not only would he introduce me to Dr. Eugene, he would make sure I received the payment that had been owed to my mother. But that might not be enough, I worried, and I burned through the cash she left me. That doctor is ex-Shinra, said Sang. We'll work something out. Let's go. Dr. Eugene, of course, was the physician in Under Junon. I can't, I said. Not that way. If you don't have this operation, you'll die, isn't that right? My mother always worked hard not to rely on connections with people in high places. The only time she did was when I was 5, to save my life. She had to go beg a favor from someone she never wanted to see again. It must have been humiliating for her, like she'd lost, but she did go back to work for Shinra. Sure, but she didn't pull any favors to get the job. She got it on her own, without help from anyone. So earning wages for your own work is acceptable? Sang asked. I didn't like the way he seemed to be holding back a smirk, but of course I had to say yes. Then you won't object to payments made for services rendered, he said. What services? Well, when hostile forces appeared at Helan and posed a threat to our president, you drew them away, so he would remain unharmed, like a decoy. I had no reply. Okay, it's settled. The unilateral declaration came from Kyrie. Just go to the doctor already, Evan. Just because you survived this long doesn't mean you're immortal now, right? Fine, you win. I mean, I didn't have a death wish, right? Next up was a meeting with Dr. Eugene Dmitri, and I don't mind telling you my newfound faith in humanity was tested when I heard what he had to say. Sang accompanied me into his office, and when I explained my situation, the doctor began to pace restlessly around the room, until, as if coming to a decision, he finally turned to me with a wry smile. You're a friend of the Turks now, so I guess the truth can come out. What do you mean? I was the surgeon who performed the operation on you as a child. When I heard you were President Shinra's son from the wrong side of the sheets, I said to myself, now, here's a goose that lays golden eggs. So after the surgery, I told your mother there was a problem in your brain that only I knew how to correct, for a sky-high price. I remember she fainted on the spot and didn't come around for 2 or 3 days. I'd figured I'd set the price too high. I couldn't get a single word out, so Sang spoke for me. And after that? Back then, I often pulled stunts like that. My salary was peanuts. You have to understand, anyway. I soon forgot all about you and your mother until she got in touch with me out of the blue 2 years ago to ask what I'd told her and still held. If what I told her still held. About the fee for the surgery, she meant. I suppose she was worried about inflation, and she said she'd have the money soon. So she wanted me to operate on you. Can you believe it? After all that time? The man almost made it sound like this was my mother's fault. So you're saying there was nothing wrong with my head in the first place? Exactly. My mom had been swindled into slaving for money her whole life and ultimately taking a job that killed her, and the man whose fault it was stood right in front of me. I guess it was wrong what I did. I never thought someone would be taken in for so many years, but I guess that's on me. Sorry, the doctor shrugged, perhaps even contritely. My fist clenched as I stepped towards him, but Sang held my arm. Was there a young man named Fabio involved in this at all? He asked. No, I don't know a Fabio, said the doctor. What about a Dr. Drake? Oh yes, Drake. He was my assistant for a long time. I had a call from him a few days ago. There's a boy whose heart you operated on a long time ago, he was saying, and he's all grown up, a patient of mine now. Just talking about the good old days, mostly. Did you talk about my head? I said, about the non-existent problem in my brain. Well, perhaps I might have mentioned it, Dr. Eugene admitted, and suggested he send you my way. The clinic doesn't pull in much money, you see. My fingernails were digging even deeper into my palms. Dr. Drake had told Fabio, and then Fabio had gone looking for me, so he could take me to Under Junon, which was why he'd died trying to steal a helicopter. Thank you for telling us, Dr. Eugene, Sang said tonelessly. I stared at the linoleum floor, thinking, I can't just leave this bastard to his business. But I had no idea what to do. I heard the tinkling clash of glass breaking against metal, and I looked up to see the doctor on the floor, his toppled chair next to him. Sang had punched him or something. What are you? Dr. Eugene stammered, cowering. I heard the dull thud of Sang's boot ramming into his flesh. Over and over, the doctor had started groaning. I realized I was enjoying his pitiful sounds, and a chill went down my spine. This wasn't the world where I belonged. Not the world my mother believed in. I looked at Sang's back as he stood over the doctor. That's enough. Stop it, I managed to scream. You should leave, Sang said sternly. Rude will take home. Too much had gone on today. Too many people had been involved. Kyrie and me, the Turks, doctors, Dimitri and Drake. Suddenly I remembered Dr. Drake, the photograph and the arm. We'd found something that seemed to be Genova, and I'd kicked it into the life stream flowing beneath the snowfields. Somehow I felt obliged to report to Sang what we found. I see. That's all he said. I walked out of the clinic with the doctor's pleas for his life still ringing in my ears. Despite the absence of both the Turks and Headman Doyle, the volunteers' work on the monument had made steady progress, and now it was nearly complete. They had worked on it not because they were cowards who couldn't imagine living without Shinra, but because they were individuals of free will who wanted to join together and use their skills to build something they believed in. Reno and Rude lingered in the plaza to thank the volunteers, and the rest of us headed to Dr. Drake's office. It turned out a whole gaggle of people were already looking after him, mostly people he'd helped in the past. Apparently, a patient had come in and found the doctor collapsed in a pool of his own blood. Amazingly, Dr. Drake had managed to stop the bleeding and stitch himself up before he passed out. Some doctor, huh? Colleagues of his from all over Edge rushed out as soon as they heard about what happened and gave him the treatment he needed to survive. It made me feel good hearing that story. For the time being, I moved into Fabio's place to live with Bits, Leslie and Merle, and had taken over Leslie and Merle had taken over my house, and after the discussion, we figured it would be better for Bits to stay where he was. He was really beat up about his brother, and his geostigma symptoms were not improving either. We were seriously worried we might lose him too. Kyrie came to visit almost every day, and Bits would beg her to stay the night, often successfully. Eventually, she brought over her big bag stuffed full of clothes, and after all that, she went home only on occasion. Splashes of different colors began to appear in all green rooms. One day, Bits was groaning in the grip of a bad fever, when suddenly he spoke up in a peacefully lucid voice. I want to go to the church in the slums. It was pouring outside, and Kyrie and I did our best to keep him from venturing out into the rain. But later, when it was getting dark, Leslie burst in with incredible news that a miraculous spring had bubbled up in the church, in the slums, and that the water could cure geostigma. Word had spread fast at the church and was completely mobbed. He said, still uncertain whether to believe the story, we put Bits on my back and headed for the slums. The rain had lifted by then. We went through the central plaza. On the way, the monument was in ruins. Apparently there'd been some kind of almighty battle with a huge monster, a summon, that had wrecked the monument and some of the nearby buildings under construction. We couldn't figure out why we hadn't heard about it. The plaza was overflowing with people, but there were no Turks to be seen. I felt a paradoxical mixture of relief and disappointment. I glimpsed Sang's brutality when we parted ways in Under Junon, and I knew the same instinct lurked in Reno and Rude and Elena too. But at the same time, they were fun to be around, and there were moments when I thought of them as friends. Even moments when we were friends. I wanted to see them again for sure, just not right away. First, I had to gain the strength to stand up to their vicious side, and I figured I could do that if I stayed and looked after Bits and Kyrie, of course. I wonder if we'll see them again, said Kyrie, staring at the space where the monument had once stood. Do you want to? I said. Heck yeah. I'm still ticked off at them. I'll never be able to let it go if I don't tell them what I think about some of the stunts they pulled. Right. Kyrie already had that strength. You can't be friends with Shinra, Bits scolded at my back. Yeah, we know, I said. For now, that was the only answer to give him. Bits never made the slightest attempt to hide his loathing for Shinra, and someday I would have to talk things over with him. I couldn't imagine it would go well considering my connection with the company, but I wanted to believe we'd see eye to eye one day. The church was buzzing with hope and joy. Waiting in the line that had formed, we could hear the happy calls from inside. Then someone called out to me. Oh hey, Strife Delivery Service! I shouted in reply. Oh hey, Strife Delivery Service! I shouted in reply without even meaning to. Sorry, Cloud, right? Does he have geostigma? Cloud asked, referring to my piggyback passenger. Yes, he does. Bits wanted confirmation. I'll get better in the church, right? Right, Cloud replied. The cure is in there. I told them, said Bits, appealing to Cloud as his newest ally. Evan and Kyrie didn't believe me. Well, they should. Cloud's face relaxed into a gentle smile. Then he looked at me. Did you make it to Nibelheim? Yeah, thanks for the help, I said. I never thought you would. Guess I was wrong. You don't need to tell people things like that, Bits scolded precautiously. You're right. I'll keep that in mind, Cloud smiled again. I had to tell my dead brother the same thing, said Bits. Cloud looked faintly confused. His name's Bits. He doesn't sound sick, does he? I said. He's my friend's little brother. Oh, and this is Kyrie, Bits added, Evan's girlfriend. No, I'm not, Kyrie protested, but she sounded happy. Unable to decipher what she actually meant, I looked at her, and she turned to Cloud. We're already a family, as real as any other. Cloud, let's go home, called a boy with chestnut hair, about the same age as Bits. You must be Denzel, I blurted with absolute confidence. I talked to you on the phone once. You probably don't remember. No, sorry. Denzel, apparently a bit shy, ducked behind Cloud. Hey, you are the private eyes, a small girl chimed in. Evan and Kyrie. That was Marlene. Outside of Seventh Heaven, she was a normal kid as any, which is sort of hilarious. Next to appear was Tifa. Hello there. Oh, hi. Feeling somehow awkward, I fumbled with my reply, and Kyrie practically glued herself to me. Tifa gave me a sly, teasing look. Come by the bar sometime and tell me what happened, she said, smiling at each of us equally. Not today, though, said Marlene. It's all booked up. My dad said he's going to drink every drop of booze in the place. Marlene's dad? I'm sure I looked mystified. Cloud finally spoke up. No blood ties, but we're a family, just like you. See you later, Marlene declared, bidding us an abrupt farewell of a child, and tugged at Cloud's hand. He raised his eyebrow by way of farewell, and then let Marlene pull him away. Today's so special, even Vincent's gonna come, she was telling him. Nice surprise, we heard Cloud reply. Hey, Evan, said Kyrie. Wasn't there a Vincent in my mom's letter, she meant. Yeah, it's a common name, though, right? Maybe, but why don't we go to Seventh Heaven and check? Marlene said the bar's booked up. So, we'll just invite ourselves, Kyrie insisted. How many opportunities have you missed because you found a reason to procrastinate? There was a large hole in the floor near the middle of the church, where the water had pulled in. It was like a spring. The water was clear, but even so, the bottom was too deep to see. I held Bits tight as I slowly dunked him in. The moment my hands were wet, I felt it. Yes, this is the cure. Before our eyes, all the signs of Bits' geostigma vanished in less time than it took to tell you. Whoa! Evan, Kyrie, I feel better already, he crowed. Evan, pull me out. I lifted him up onto the water and got him standing on the wooden floor. Bits rolled up his shirt to show us his back. All gone. He ran around, dodging between the masses of people, triumphantly repeating the phrase. Hey, Kyrie, feel the water. I offered her my hand, still dripping wet. She touched my fingers, and her eyebrows shot up with question. She crouched down beside the spring and plunged her hand in. It's the life stream. Kyrie and I left Bits with Leslie and Merle and went to our agency's office. There we climbed into Kyrie's bed together and snuggled under the blankets. My new jacket hung on the wall. It was softer and a simpler garment. Kyrie let out a happy giggle and took the letter from under her pillow. She'd read it more than a few times already, but here she was about to read it again. It was from Tiran Arade, and it had appeared under the door along with the not insubstantial sum of money. He had written to us that his son Gold had contacted him, and they were planning to meet up soon. There was also a whole bunch of stuff about how awesome and amazing Muriel's investigation services were, and he was eternally in our debt, etc., etc. He says he'd really like us to get in touch with him sometime. In fact, he wants to take us out for a meal, said Kyrie. He already paid us, and you're going to make him buy us food too? But that's what he wants to do. It'll probably make him happy, right? Good times are even better when they're shared. I guess we can give him a call. I already did. That was fast, I remarked. Lunch tomorrow, she informed me, and Bits can come too. Got it. We never did return the phone saying lent us in Icicle Lodge. The Turks hadn't said anything about it since, but if this was how Kyrie was going to use it, maybe I should just send it back. And actually, I called Reno too, she confessed. He was in Icicle Lodge. Startled, I sat up. She groaned in protest, yanking the blanket tighter around herself. What? Why? I assume he was there helping the townspeople, after the fire. I don't think it's that surprising. No, I meant, why would you call Reno? Well, that time Reno and Rude first went to your house, it was your birthday, right? Yeah. I didn't forget, but with the stuff that was going on, I never got to tell you happy birthday, said Kyrie. So, I thought maybe I could throw you a makeup party. And you were going to invite the Turks? Well, not just the Turks, your brother too. Yep, I should seriously return that phone. Kyrie, I can't believe you even thought of doing that. Reno said it was a great idea, and he actually called me, your brother. I wish you'd stop calling him that. It feels weird. So what did he say? He said he had better things to do. Of course he did, I said with a snort. But then, he said, he doesn't envy you at all. What did he mean by that? The laughter started out with a giggle in my midsection, then slowly became a full-on laugh. I just might pay him a visit sometime. The end.